Nadine, would you like to introduce the awesome Melonie de Guzman?
Yes, Melonie de Guzman, when we met Melonie de Guzman, she was a project manager for a media corporation and trying to see herself in more of a leadership position, getting on podcasts, getting on panels, and trying to figure out a way to see herself differently after having experienced some, I don't know, how many of you have had that experience of someone at work telling you who you are, and it's not in alignment with how you see yourself. And so Mel really wanted to build that up for herself. And she has since done some really phenomenal things, which I hope she'll share with us all today. Welcome, Melonie.
I want to say one thing. When we first talked, you were like, I want to be on stage at a thing, and you were terrified of that. And you were like, maybe in like a year or something. And then what happened?
And then I just went buck wild, and in 2020 I did about over 20 conferences, virtual because we're in the pandemic, but conferences and workshops for a lot of women in tech conferences.
Yeah, you were on stage everywhere, it was so great.
Yeah, but I actually want to rewind, because I remember our very first conversation, and I want to give context to it when we had our one-on-one, Stephanie. So I'm going to go a little bit back in time to go into because Nadine and I, we worked together. So we worked together, and I was so confused about where I was in my career. It was I felt like I was doing everything correctly. And then Stephanie, you mentioned about the approved expected steps. I felt like I was doing the approved expected steps, taking the narrative of in school, you go to school, you go to class, you take your exam, you pass, you move up. And I took that same narrative into my career, and I couldn't figure it out because bosses loved me, I was productive, I was reliable, I had the biggest portfolio, I won awards, but I kept getting overlooked for leadership positions, for promotions whenever I went for that job. And unfortunately, for the longest time, whenever that happened, I just took that internally, and I was like, well, I'm not good enough, because I listened to authority and they're telling me I'm not good enough. So therefore, I need to go back to school. I need to take another certification. I need to try harder, because that must be the reason. And it wasn't until maybe 16 years into my career where I had to take a step back, and I was like, this isn't working. What am I going to do? This is the only process that I know. Study hard, get a good grade, climb up that ladder. That was the only narrative I knew. And I remember when the first time I had my one-on-one with Stephanie was my conversation was wait, hi, Stephanie. So you know how it works in media. So I need to get a promotion so that I can get a raise. And so I can put that money away for retirement so I can retire. And that was just basically my next responsible goal, because if that wasn't my goal, that was very irresponsible. And it wasn't until, Stephanie, that you started asking me those questions on the other slide. So what do I really want? That I was I actually want to be on stage. I actually feel like I have something to say, especially as we're talking intersectionality. I work in tech. I've never, my previous company, kind of my current company also that I'm working at, my previous company was 60 people in the department, only 4 women in the whole department. I was the only woman of color. It was one of those things. And I felt responsible, because every time I went to these conferences, first they were obviously inspirational and I loved them, but all of a sudden I started getting the urge of oh, I have something to say. I was I want my story to be heard. And that's scary at first, because you first think, who cares? Who cares about your story? It is obviously, women in tech is an issue. That's it. You don't need to say anymore. We already know what the narrative is. But it wasn't until I started speaking on those panels and having those conferences and seeing the comments pop up saying, me too, like, you know, first generation immigrant, I get it, like, you know, and things like that, where I realized that I wasn't alone in this journey. So anyways, so basically it was very much of a, like, you know, before Kickstartology, thinking I had the right formula, really going to Stephanie and Nadine saying, okay, what's wrong with my formula? Because I just need to get a raise so I can go to retirement. And then having that permission of like, hey, what do you want? And the self-image manifesto,
I have dramatic names for things, I know.
Yeah, that's one of our tools.
It's one of the tools, but basically it is like, I can say that I use it at least weekly, because I now, one of my actually, because of the exercise that you had like at the very beginning of the pandemic, where we met at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then we did our own thing, meditating. I took up journaling. I have not missed a day. It was, I am now a big journaler. And one of the things is that, like, I'm a project manager, so like a retrospective of, like, you know, what my manifesto is and where do I see it, and the fun that I have with it, and how does it evolve, or even like now I'm in doing like more of like series, and is it my soft season, or is it my like boss season? Like, you know, how do I want this to all come out? Because I've never, before you asked that question, I never answered it, because I was just doing what I was told. Mel, go to school, get a job with the benefits, and retire. There's no in between, that nothing matters what's in between, right?
Right, so
But
relatable.
Yeah, but that stuff in between is the fun stuff.
Yeah, so talk about that a bit. Also funny that you said seasons, because we call Kickstartology seasons now, and we have a new season coming up November 21st. So but talk a bit about that fun stuff, because like also when you were with us, it was a pandemic lockdown. I mean, it's still technically a pandemic, but we were in lockdown mode. We weren't going anywhere. We weren't seeing anyone, and you were isolated because your partner had a high risk job and was isolated in another environment. Like, how did you build fun into your life without making it a to-do, another thing to check off?
Really, it took me a while. And I remember one of the things that I kept, it was part of my scripting, but it was also part of the of Kickstartology. I am so happy and grateful that, right? And my thing was that when I was trying to get out of my job, I am so happy and grateful that I am having fun and making a fortune at my job that, like, you know, loves me for who I am and all this stuff. And Stephanie, I don't know if you remember this. You're like, say that part again. And I kept on missing the fun part. And you're like, can you just focus on having fun? And I was like, oh, I guess I can, but I don't know how. So let's figure that out. Let's gather that data. And it wasn't actually until recently where, because sometimes, just like Nadine, I want to do all the things. So I've been really busy on the, like, you know, focusing on the public speaking, and then focusing, 2021 was like a whole big job shift. So I was focusing on that. And then now I was like, oh yeah, I remember talking about fun. Let's get that fun back in. So just in October, sometimes I go overboard on fun, so I just sign up for all the things. So like I took an arts class in watercoloring, and then like see how that, I took up golf, like golf lessons. Like I didn't just see like, oh, I'm going to go play golf and see how it goes. No, I signed up for a coach, and then they taught me how to golf.
So cute. Yeah, you went to Bali?
I went to Bali. Was great. Bali was a vision board, 40th birthday, going with your BFF, like type of like thing out of the pandemic. You've seen that meme of like, you know, during the pandemic is like the second that they opened up, your best friend comes running through the door with her bags packed, and you're like, let's go. That was literally us.
I want to bring it back to one useful thing, because I love you having more fun. But remember when you came, you're like, my formula is not working.
Yes.
And you thought in order to get what you wanted, that we were going to be like, let's discuss what I say to my boss.
We did.
I was like,
oh, yes, exactly.
It doesn't actually matter, because you're so stuck in the weeds that nothing's going to change permanently.
And that was a big thing where like, I was so focused on climbing that corporate ladder. The question of like, do I even want to be on that ladder? Like, look at them, like they're miserable. Do I want that job with those people, with this team? And I was like, oh no, I don't. Damn. Right. So when you're talking about like, that conversation with my boss, in the end, yes, it didn't matter because I needed to bounce anyways. Like, it didn't matter the words out of his mouth or my mouth. I was already checked out.
And what I remember is like, you've come so far. Like, I see you as such a leader, and frankly, that was always shining from within you, right? And again, like, my job as a coach is to help you get the fuck out of your own way and see what that within yourself. And I remember you trying to be like, so what do I say to come off like a leader? Like, you didn't say that exactly, but I remember saying, Mel, we're actually doing the work so that you can see that you are a leader. And then it's not about what do I say, it's how do you show up as the leader you want to be. And it was so much easier from that point. You started getting the results you wanted and realizing what you didn't want as well.
Yeah. And that was a big, like, I was waiting for someone to like knight me as a leader, like give me the job title. And
Knight me.
And one of the things I like, and again, this might be part of the flipping the pancake of like, like part of the tools and techniques that we get through the coaching, but it was like, instead of being hard on myself, it's if the company doesn't see me as like, someone they want in a leadership, that's not a me problem. That's them and their narrative. If they can't, like, if they don't want diversity at the table or anything like that, I was like, maybe I don't want to be there, because I need to be at a place that really embraces that, and really trying to, again, the gathering data part, like figuring out what my values are and the types of places I want to work with, and things. And it is like,
environment matters.
Yeah, environment completely matters. And when I look at my life,
you're
like,
allowed to love your job. You're allowed to love your life every day of the week.
Every day. Who knew?
And I didn't know it was possible, because I was like, oh, if I work in tech, it's going to be a grind every single day. It doesn't matter where I go. And I was
and
like,
then I'll retire.
Yeah. The place that I'm working at now, I'm like, it's really good. It's one of those places that if anyone mentions burnout, a red button goes off and it goes like alarm system. Our team feels like they're burning out. How can we help them? Like, it's part of the culture, it's part of the
Brilliant. Brilliant. Oh my gosh, we're out of time again. Yeah. I know we should make these 90-minute sessions or something. Thank you so much. Melonie's information was in the emails. If you follow any of our social media accounts, you can go directly to Mel's accounts. If you want to be her friend, I got a DM from someone that wants to be your friend, Mel. I mentioned
you're so awesome. Yeah, I kind of like, how do we make these longer? Yeah, is really what I want to think, because you have so many insights and I love what you're doing. And I just love seeing you shining out there and knowing you have every right to shine and you have everything you need to shine.
I now have the audacity to shine.
Yes.
Right.